Dopamine isn't pleasure.
It really isn't. And, if you're out there chasing dopamine because you think it's the molecule of happiness, you are running a race that you are biologically guaranteed to lose.
That is the single biggest misunderstanding we see, sort of in pop science. We treat dopamine like it's this little reward pellet the brain gives us for being good. But looking at this stack of research, the neuroimaging, the addiction studies, the reality is much more complex.
And frankly, a little darker.
Yeah.
It is darker. But it's also kind of liberating. Because if you operate under the assumption that dopamine is just the fun chemical, you will completely misunderstand why you do the things you do.
Especially things you don't actually want to do anymore.
Exactly.
That's the feeling we're targeting today, that sensation of, scrolling or eating where you aren't even enjoying it, but your hand just keeps moving.
Right. The why am I still doing this moment.
So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to move past the memes and get into the actual biological machinery of motivation. We're digging into a pretty heavy stack of sources today, including the incentive sensitization theory, the opponent process theory, and some really fascinating and slightly terrifying neuroimaging studies.
We're essentially asking, why does the brain sometimes feel like it's fighting against us? Why do we doom scroll when the joy is long gone?
And I want to set the tone right away. We're busting myths, but we're doing it with kindness. This is a look at biology, not moral failings. If you've ever felt like your willpower is broken, the research we have here suggests it's not you.
It's your wiring. It's mechanics, not character. And mechanics can be fixed.
Okay, let's get into it. We have to start with what the sources call the pleasure paradox. Because the internet tells me dopamine is the yay reaction, the confetti cannon when I get a like on Instagram.
That's the classic error. And to be fair, for a long time, even scientists thought that. But the critical distinction in modern neuroscience, and this is really the backbone of everything, is the difference between liking and wanting.
Liking versus wanting. I mean, in casual conversation, those are synonyms. I want the cookie because I like the cookie.
They feel connected for sure.
Right.
But biologically, they are two completely different systems in the brain. They use different neurotransmitters, different pathways. Liking is the hedonic impact, the actual pleasure.
Okay.
The sweetness of sugar on your tongue, the warmth of a hug. That feeling is actually handled by the opioid and endocannabinoid system.
So the joy part, the actual feeling of this is good, that's not dopamine.
No. Dopamine has almost nothing to do with the experience of pleasure itself. Dopamine is the wanting. It's the system of incentive salience. It's not the feeling of having the prize. It's the intense driving compulsion to go get the prize.
There was a study in the notes about Parkinson's patients that I think illustrates this better than anything. It really blew my mind. Can we walk through that one?
Oh, it's the smoking gun for this theory. So Parkinson's disease involves a severe depletion of dopamine. The cells that make it essentially die off. So researchers found that if you give these patients something sweet and you measure their facial expressions, which is a universal marker for liking, they still show all the signs of enjoyment.
They still like it. They can feel the joy.
They love it. They smile. They rate it as delicious. The liking system is perfectly intact. But, and here's the kicker, if you put that same sugar just across the room,
they won't get it.
They won't move. They won't lift a finger to get it.
Because the wanting is just gone.
Without dopamine, the bridge between I enjoy this and I should go get this is completely broken. You can have zero dopamine and still experience pleasure, but you'll have zero motivation to seek it out.
That totally reframes the whole function. So dopamine isn't a reward, it's a propellant. It's the go-get-it signal.
It's a learning signal. Evolutionarily, it screams, pay attention. This thing you just did, it is critical for survival. Do it again.
And in a natural environment, 50,000 years ago, that's a perfect system. You find a berry bush, you get a hit of dopamine, you remember where that bush is.
Right. It helps us navigate the world to find food, water, mates. In the wild, rewards are scarce and require work. The dopamine release is like a garden hose. It waters the plants, keeps the system healthy.
But we aren't living in the wild anymore. We are living in a world of what the sources call super stimuli.
And this is where the machinery just breaks down. We've engineered our environment to bypass all the effort. I mean, drugs are the obvious example, but modern tech, infinite scroll, highly processed sugar, video games, these act like a fire hose.
A fire hose versus a garden hose? I like that.
It's a flood, a massive immediate flood of dopamine that completely overwhelms the system. It's a level of stimulation the brain just wasn't designed to handle.
And this leads to that incentive sensitization theory. This was a heavy read, but the gist is you can have this massive wanting signal getting louder and louder, even as the liking signal gets quieter.
That is the tragedy of addiction, whether it's to heroin or TikTok. The brain rewires to want the thing intensely. That's the sensitization. The dopamine system becomes hypersensitive to cues. But the actual enjoyment, the opioid system, it gets bored.
So the math just stops working. You have high wanting, low liking.
Precisely. This explains why you can be sitting there scrolling through your feed for an hour, feeling bored, maybe even a little anxious, and yet you cannot stop. Your wanting machinery is screaming at maximum volume, drowning out the part of you that's saying, I don't actually enjoy this.
You're just stuck in a pathological motivation loop. You're wanting what hurts you.
And the scariest part, your brain thinks it's helping. It thinks it's saving your life.
That brings us to the second big idea, the crash. Because it's not just that we want things too much, it's that when we aren't doing them, regular life starts to feel, well, gray. It loses its color.
This connects to the opponent process theory. And to understand this, you have to look at the brain as a master of balance. The biological term is homeostasis. The brain just wants to be stable.
I love the metaphor of the pendulum for this. It makes the chemistry so much easier to visualize.
It's the best way to see it. Imagine your mood is a pendulum. When a super stimulus like a drug or a gambling win pushes that pendulum way over to the side of pleasure.
It's what they call the A process, the spike.
Right. But the brain hates being off balance. It registers that spike as a threat. So it immediately pushes back. It launches a B process, an opposing force, to drag the pendulum back down to center.
But you can't just stop a swinging pendulum dead in the center.
Nope. Physics applies. If you swing high to the right, you are going to swing hard to the left. You swing past neutral and deep into pain, into dysphoria, anxiety, the crash.
And this is where the research on tolerance gets really dark. I think most people, myself included, think tolerance just means I got used to it. You know, I need 2 cups of coffee now instead of 1.
That's the surface of it.
Yeah.
But biologically, tolerance means the brain is getting better, faster, and stronger at producing the crash. The brain learns. It says, oh, here comes that coffee. I know this pattern. I need to counteract it immediately. So it launches that B process, the punishment, sooner and with more force.
So the high gets shorter because the brain is fighting it faster, and the crash gets deeper and longer.
Exactly. And eventually, that B process becomes the dominant state. You aren't taking the substance to get high anymore. You're doing it just to stop the screaming B process, just to feel normal.
The sources called it reward deficiency syndrome. It sounds like the brain literally turns down the volume on the rest of the world.
It has to. To protect itself from that fire hose, the brain starts physically removing D2 dopamine receptors. It's like blowing out your speakers because the music is too loud.
So the subtle music is still playing, but the hardware is broken.
Yes. And once those speakers are blown out, the quiet music of everyday life, a sunset, a good conversation, you can't hear it anymore. The volume is too low. You become numb to everything except the fire hose.
That is profound. And it leads to this idea that just changes how we view cravings entirely. We think a craving is, I want to have fun. But based on this, a craving is really, I need to stop this distress.
That is the crucial insight. A craving is often the brain launching that B process before you even do the thing. It sees a cue, a time of day, a place, and it anticipates the spike. So it drops your dopamine proactively to prepare.
So that restless, antsy feeling you get when you haven't checked your phone in an hour, that's your brain dropping you into a hole so that you'll scramble to climb out.
You're not chasing a high. You're relief-seeking. You are desperately trying to get back to zero.
Man, that reframes the whole experience from pursuit of pleasure to avoidance of pain. But it brings up the next big hurdle. If we know this, why can't we just say no? Why does willpower feel so flimsy in those moments?
This gets us to the willpower glitch. And again, this isn't a metaphor. It's pure biology. It comes down to speed.
The 33 millisecond finding?
Yes. The brain can detect a trigger, a visual cue, a smell in about 33 milliseconds. That is 1/30th of a second.
Faster than a blink.
Much faster. And it's definitely faster than conscious thought. By the time you consciously realize, oh, look, there's a donut, your dopamine system is already fired. The gas pedal's on the floor.
So you've got this battle between the gas and the brakes.
Right. The gas is the primal emotional part of your brain. The brakes are the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. That's the logical part of you that cares about your diet, your future, your goals.
But the sources say that in a high craving state, the brakes don't just work poorly, they're effectively cut.
It's called hypofrontality. The stress of the craving literally short-circuits the connection to the PFC. Your logic center goes offline. It's like trying to load a web page on a computer that's been unplugged.
So when people say, why didn't you just think about the consequences?
You literally couldn't. You cannot think your way out of a process that has bypassed your thinking brain. You're fighting raw biology with a compromised control system.
There's one study in the stack that really drives home how persistent these changes are. The heroin study from 2016. This was the one that made me realize this isn't just in your head, it's in your meat.
The study on deceased users. It's sobering. Researchers looked at brain tissue and found a specific protein, basically a dependence memory switch, that was still present in the reward centers 9 days after death.
9 days after death. So the molecular structure of the brain was still holding on to that wanting?
It shows that this isn't a bad habit.
Yeah.
It is a molecular restructuring of the brain's motivational hardware. It explains why just trying harder usually fails. You are up against a physical change in your own tissue.
Right, that is heavy. And I feel like if we ended right here, we just leave everyone in a state of dread. But we have to talk about what to do about it, because even if the brakes are glitchy, we can still drive the car, right?
We can, but we need better mechanics. If you know your brakes are bad, you don't drive fast, and you don't rely on stopping on a dime, you change how you drive.
Okay, let's get into the toolkit. We pulled out 2 main practical strategies from the sources. The first one is the trigger map.
Right, this is based on the idea that craving is a conditioned response. It's automatic, so you have to catch it early before the wave crashes.
The sources suggest a 3-step map: the cue, the feeling, and the next move.
Yeah, step 1, identify the cue. Most people don't actually know what triggers them. You have to be a detective. Is it 3:00 p.m.? Is it the stress of an email from your boss? Is it sitting on a specific couch?
You have to map the chain reaction back to the very start.
Exactly. And step 2 is identifying the feeling. What does the B process feel like for you?
Because it's not always just, I want chocolate.
Almost never. Usually it's physiological first.
Yeah.
Is it a tunnel vision? Is it a tightness in your chest? Is it just a vague, buzzing restlessness? If you can spot that feeling before it becomes a demand, you have a window.
And then step 3, pre-plan the next move.
This is key. It has to be pre-planned. Because remember, your logic will be offline in the moment. You can't decide then. You need a script. When I feel that restlessness at 3 p.m., I will get up and walk to the water cooler.
It has to be that specific.
It has to be robotic, not, I will try not to eat. That's a negation, not an action. You need a positive action to replace the old loop. I will drink a glass of water. I will do 5 push-ups. You're redirecting the energy.
So it's about awareness, catching the cycle before the crash takes the wheel.
Yes. Awareness is the wedge you drive into the machine.
Okay, takeaway number 2. This one is for when the craving is already there. The friction strategy.
The logic here is simple. Since the PSC, the brakes, is slow to come online, you have to buy it time. You have to delay the action long enough for your logic to catch up.
The sources mention a 60-second rule.
If you could just create a 60-second delay, often that wave of craving will crest and begin to recede just enough for you to get back in control.
But you can't just sit there white-knuckling it for 60 seconds. If I'm staring at the cookie, I'm gonna eat the cookie.
No, willpower is a terrible strategy there. You used friction. You add a physical barrier, put the phone in another room, lock the chocolate in a high cupboard. You're using what the sources call external scaffolding.
I like that. You're not trusting your internal structure. You're building an external one to hold you up.
You're outsourcing your willpower to the environment.
And there was a bonus technique in there called naming the state.
Yes, it helps create cognitive distance. When you feel that urge, you literally say to yourself out loud or in your head, this is a craving. This is the B process. This is my brain fixing a chemical imbalance.
It takes the shame out of it. It's not, I'm a weak person. It's, my biology is doing a thing right now.
And that tiny bit of distance, that observation, is often enough to bring the prefrontal cortex back online. You shift from being the experiencer of the craving to the observer of it, and the observer can make choices.
I love that. It turns you from a victim into a scientist of your own experience.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's bring this all home. Dopamine is not pleasure, it's motivation. It's the go-get-it signal.
And when we overstimulate it, the brain fights back with a crash, the B process, which creates a drive not to feel good, but just to feel normal again.
And because this system acts faster than our conscious thought, that 33 millisecond gap, we have to outsmart it with preparation, with mapping triggers and adding friction.
Exactly. It's about respecting the biology. You wouldn't try to stop a car by dragging your feet on the pavement. You change the environment.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, and maybe a little concerning. Our brains are wired to learn from superstimuli incredibly fast.
Right. It's a survival mechanism.
Well, what happens when our entire environment is engineered to be a superstimulus? The apps, the food, the news cycle, it's all designed to be a fire hose.
That raises a really important question. If the environment is constantly pushing our pendulum to the limit, are we all living in a permanent state of B process?
That's exactly what I'm wondering. Are we all functionally in a dopamine deficit state, just sort of low-level anxious and restless, waiting for the next ping to get us back to baseline?
That is something to think about. Are we addicted or are we just exhausted from the seesaw?
It's a blur. And it suggests that managing our environment, curating what we let in, that might be the most important health skill of the 21st century.
I think you're right. We have to guard the gates.
Absolutely. Well, on that cheerful but provocative note, just a reminder that while we are diving deep into the science, we are not doctors.
Right. Standard disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. If you're struggling, please seek professional medical advice.
We have put the full stack of sources in the description if you want to geek out on the neuroimaging studies.
And for our next deep dive, we're going to dig even deeper into that wanting versus liking split. We're going to look at why we sometimes crave things we actually hate.
Oh, you don't want to miss that. And hey, if you want a one-page summary of that trigger map we talked about, just comment dopamine below and we'll get that to you.
It's a great tool to start with.
Thanks for listening. Go protect your dopamine.
See you next time.